Josh Reese here, Ben DuBose there. This is the Red and Orange Report, doing a little bit of a Rockets video here because we're not doing the podcast this week, so we got to do a little bit of something Rockets, kind of in the news.
A lot of home games, a lot of activity. We thought, you know what? Why don't we open things up to our listeners and do a little Twitter mailbag? I think answer a few of our questions, and we'll get to that in a minute. But
before, we've got to start off. I mean, Sunday they beat the Clippers.
Yes.
And they beat them well. And
they finally beat the full-strength Clippers. Well, they didn't have Jamal Crawford, but they did have Blake Griffin and Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan, which is the core that the Rockets have struggled with for so long.
And the most impressive thing about that win, maybe might not be how the Rockets won, more how they came back from those two really terrible losses against inferior competition.
Sure. I actually really think that them losing the rebounding battle by 7 to the Clippers was a minor miracle. Yeah. You lost back-to-back games to Portland and Utah, in which they out-rebounded you by 20. That is a ton. And so then you go up against a front line consisting of DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin. Mm-hmm. Those guys can get you, 25 and 10 rebounds each if if it really comes to it. And to only be out-rebounded by 7, I thought they really competed very well. And Monty Eunice, for not having a great stat line, of course, he only was 3 of 15. I did think he was active against Jordan. He took some fouls. He got a big tip out late in the game. In general, I would just say they competed a lot better. It was a game in which they needed to win, and they came out very focused and got themselves a big win. Because realistically, I think the Clippers and Golden State are the only teams that you had questions about the Rockets mentally going in.
Yeah.
Everybody else, I think they believe they can beat. And even though they got that last Clippers win here at Toyota Center, Griffin was out, and it was very close down to the wire. For them to go on the road and get a win like that over the Clippers, I think it's a big emotional hurdle for them to get over.
I think something also has to be said about the Rockets that they have not lost 3 straight games all season long. When they hit 2 games, it seems like the back's against the wall. They have to win that next game.
Sure.
It just seems like they come out with a different type of mentality after they lose that second game.
We talked about last week on the show the metric of the Rockets being 25-3, now 25-4, which still leads the league against below 500 teams. And really, you should even get to count Utah as a sub-500 team. They're the best team in the league since the All-Star break and since inserting Rudy Gobert. But the Rockets are a very mature team. They take care of business against the teams that they should beat throughout the year. And they don't lose 3 games in a row because what happens? Well, they lose a couple of games in a row and the focus comes out razor sharp. And that's what it was Sunday. I didn't think they really started the game slow, other than the fact they couldn't make a 3 to save their lives.
It took a long time.
But, the focus was there, the defense was there. It wasn't like they were playing poorly. They just couldn't buy a shot. And then in the second quarter, once the shots started falling, the result flipped. And I think it bodes very well as you get towards the playoffs that when this team finds a need to buckle down and finds themselves back in the corner, they typically respond very well.
Another point, do not make James Harden mad. I think that was another key that you found in the Clippers game.
Yeah.
Body slam James Harden might not be the smartest thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Seems to really woke him up right after that.
I don't think you're going to intimidate James Harden. That's just a silly thing. Guys like Matt Barnes, they think they can just.
Job, but
Yeah, they think they can play this old school. That might work on some guys. It's not going to work on James Harden. If anything, it's going to lock him in even more.
Mm-hmm. So, some final parting thoughts on that game. What were some things that really impressed you outside other than the rebounding? They came back a little bit.
Sure. Trevor Ariza really stood out. We know our own Rockets insider did a film study breakdown today about his role as a secondary facilitator, and of course had 19 points, shot the ball well.
Really good
but
D.
The defense is what really stood out. You're talking about the last 15 seconds of the game. He had to know exactly where Griffin was going to draw that charge, and he did. And by the way, the NBA, the last 2-minute report confirmed, right call. Ariza was there, he beat Griffin to the point of contact. And then the last possession of the game, he took on Chris Paul one-on-one. And I'll tell you exactly what Chris Paul was thinking down two. He was thinking that he was going to pass, either to a cutting Blake Griffin around the bucket, or to Redick or Barnes for a 3 that would have won the game. Yep. He actually looked very stunned to be in a position to have to shoot the ball, and of course missed it badly. And I think it's because so few guys can actually stick with Chris Paul one-on-one in that situation. He's used to being double teamed. With Trevor Ariza, you don't have to double team. All your other defenders can stay home, and it's incredibly valuable to have a guy like that on your team as you get to the playoffs. We saw it against LeBron James 2 weeks ago. Held him to 37 points on 35 shots, and we saw it against Chris Paul on Sunday. There are very few players in the league that can actually guard the greats one-on-one. and Ariza is one of them. And as you get to the playoffs and you play more of these great players, I think the value of that is going to stick out even more.
Lots of differences from last year's team to this year's team. When we look back on this year, I think one of the big differences that we're going to be happy about is the addition of Trevor Ariza. And, not only his threes or whatever, but that defense that he brings is just something the Rockets did not have last year. They had no one that was a defensive stopper that you could put on, a team's quote-unquote best player and really give that player a really hard time.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with why they've never lost 3 games in a row.
Yep.
When you have these guys like Ariza and Beverly that are such bulldogs that are so laser focused on the opponent, it's tough to go into slump for that long. If you're relying on shooting the ball and being in rhythm, you might hit a couple of weeks where you can't throw the ball in the ocean, and all of a sudden mentally things unravel for a little bit. With guys that are so committed on defense, that's something you can bring every single night, and you have control over it, how well you go out and defend and how much energy you bring. And I think that has a lot to do with how the Rockets are able to avoid these lengthy slumps that have hit most other teams in the league. But they haven't here.
Defense is effort, and the Rockets have a lot of effort this year.
Yep.
I think we need to get into some of the Twitter questions. All right, first one off the bat, this one comes from Joseph Austin. Do you think Corey Brewer comes back next year?
Absolutely, I think he does.
He's just having way too damn much fun.
It's not going to be easy because he waived the player option as part of his trade to Houston in December, and he is going to be a free agent, and you're basically looking at both Brewer and Josh Smith as free agents and having just the mid-level exception and lower-level exceptions to retain them. However, I think Brewer is going to be a higher priority than Josh Smith, and I think they'll keep it. Josh Smith, number one, is making a lot more money already from the Pistons.
Yeah.
So, he could sign for little. But even if Josh walks, you've got 3 good big men under contract in Dwight, Terrence Jones, and Donis Motiejunas.
And Joey Dorsey.
Yeah. And you might could even, you might even draft one with hopefully your lottery pick from New Orleans too. So you've got big man depth. I don't know that you have that many players that do what Brewer does. There was some talk when they traded for KJ McDaniels that maybe he could be a Brewer replacement. I don't think on a contender that you want to take the chance that he's ready to step into that role next year. Brewer, we argue is he the second or third most valuable right now. He could go either way, but he brings you incredible energy, and I think that's something that's going to be their biggest priority to retain.
Well, Joseph, if there's anybody that can find a way to get Corey Brewer back, it's definitely Daryl Morey. He can definitely find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
We also got a question from CJ. Once Dwight returns, who misses out on minutes? It's a tough one. We've talked about it a few times, especially with Geltz. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
It was a while back.
Yeah, I think one candidate is Josh Smith. Lately, Josh has been very hit or miss. There are games in which he's very engaged, like the Portland game. I think of the huge dunk he had over Chris Kaman last week in which he sets the tone. And others that, if they don't have energy, he seems a little too content to drift back into old Josh Smith mode, where he takes a few too many threes. And, his 3 and long 2 distribution relative to, how many shots he takes driving the basket is a little too high. And so, if he's having a bad night, I think it gives you options to play him a little bit less. Also, Demo, and that's going to feed into another question, but, I think the higher workload is affecting Demo a little bit, and you can see it both in his rebounding and his shots. And I know, I'll let you chime in there because I know you follow Demo a lot, and, it's definitely been a rough 3 weeks or so for him.
Yeah, it's just, he's never played this much minutes before in his life. He also played in the summer league. He also played in the national team. I mean, he had a lot of work this year. And, he wasn't really counted on to be this type of player this year. So, I mean, I think what you're getting on is great from Demo. And, maybe kind of hit like a, what is it, the sophomore wall or whatever. But, I mean, I really feel like he's going to end up breaking through.
Yeah, it's his first year playing major minutes. And I think, to expand on this a little bit, I'm going to go into our next question, which is from Nelson Sahada. So, do you guys think Demo is actually regressing or just worn out from playing big minutes? And he notes his terrible rebounding. And I say the minutes are part of it, but I don't think it's the whole package. He's not playing superhuman minutes. He's still averaging just 28 per game. I think about 32 since he got inserted into the starting lineup full time in late November. But there's something that we didn't think about, and it's how he meshes with Terrence Jones. When they inserted Terrence Jones into the starting lineup for Joey Dorsey after the All-Star break, it filled a big need in that gave you another option on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah.
We talked with Dorsey, Beverly, and Ariza. There are too many nights where that gives you nothing and you end up behind the 8-ball offensively. But here's the thing, where Terrence really helps you defensively is as an elite shot blocker. His ability to protect the rim is only rivaled by Dwight when he's healthy. But if you're going to have Jones playing that role, you're going to have him playing weak side. So that means when you play Portland like last week, Monty Eunice has to cover the LaMarcus Aldridge because you want Jones on Robin Lopez so that he can come over and help against Aldridge, a penetrating Damian Lillard, whoever it may be. You want Jones on the less effective big so that he has more freedom to roam and block shots. Well, what that means for Demo, he's got to take on the better big, and that's not something he's used to. Because when Demo started next to Joey Dorsey or Tariq Black, I think you'd have Dorsey or Black on the Aldridges of the world because you didn't really have a shot blocker to begin with, and if somebody's going to get in foul trouble, you'd rather it not be Demo. Now with Terrence back, unfortunately, if one of those bigs is going to be in foul trouble, Terrence is too valuable, you'd rather it be Demo. And there's a double whammy, you also want Terrence as a shot blocker, so you've had Demo take on a lot more defensive responsibility, and I think that's what's costing him energy on the offensive end. Yes, he was starting for a long while, but he wasn't picking up the other team's best player, and I don't think it's coincidental. I've been thinking for a long time, why at the moment that Terrence Jones came back in old Terrence Jones form, did Demo fall off? And it seems too coincidental to just be a coincidence. And I think that's the relationship.
Well, we'll quickly wrap this up here because it's quickly approaching game time. Me and Ben are at the game here. We got a question from Cameron Shikari. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that. Shikari. Hopefully we're pronouncing that right. They say, what are the Rockets' priorities in the offseason? I want to quickly say, first of all, why are you thinking offseason right now?
Oh, come on, buddy.
We're still not even in the playoffs.
We're hitting the home stretch of the year.
Yeah. I'd like to just say, I think if the Rockets team stays as it is, I mean, you really don't have very many priorities. Backup point guard, you maybe want to upgrade over Beverly.
The biggest priority, lose some damn games, Pelicans, because you're looking at, if they make the playoffs, you're looking at potentially not even getting that draft pick at all, versus if they don't, then you're looking at adding on to a really good team with a lottery pick. There's a reason playoff teams typically don't have lottery picks because it's unfair, and that's what the Rockets are in a position to do. It's going to be interesting the offseason because of the salary cap situation. Briefly talk about there's not going to be a smoothing. You're going to have a relatively similar cap to this past year, slightly higher, and then in 2016 it's going to explode. Now the effect that I think it'll have and what most people I've seen around the league think it'll have, you're going to see more continuity. You're not going to see as many big moves. Because here's the thing, with the cap about to explode, your bottom feeders don't have as much of an incentive to shed salary anymore. Denver doesn't have to trade a Ty Lawson because you know what? With the cap about to explode, they're going to have all the room they need anyway. So you're going to have more continuity. The big teams are going to have less opportunities, in my opinion, to make splash additions than before. So having a draft pick like that is especially valuable in that context. I think point guard's definitely the position. You look at the starting lineup, I think 4 of the 5, obviously James and Dwight, but also Ariza and Terrence Jones, even Monty Eunice, if you want to
and the depth behind him is fine.
You feel good about those guys to be starters on championship teams.
Yeah.
The only guy that you have a question about is Pat Beverly, and so with this pick, I think the ideal world is you want to go out and get a highly touted college point guard who you might can start developing and potentially give you some real minutes next year.
Another Isaiah Cannon.
Yes, but a little higher drafting. Isaiah was a second-round pick, so maybe a first-rounder gets a little bit longer leash. So
that was the first ever Twitter mailbag that me and Ben did for the Rockets Red and Orange Report here. We really appreciate you sticking with us and watching.
Sure do.
I'm Josh Reese, that is.
Ben DuBose.
And you can follow us on Twitter, Dyslexic Sports, and
Ben DuBose.
And Ben DuBose. Thanks all for listening, and we will see you guys next week.
See you then.